Hey everyone, I just wanted to finally come out with a video and apologize for what I'm about to do. So I'm going to unleash probably the most cancerous build into ranked queues. You see, this build is the absolute lowest effort for highest reward you can get in PvP right now. This is the Minion Master Scourge, and once this gets a hold of the ranked queues, you're not gonna like it. And I'm sorry, but I just had to do it. I had to do it. So here you go. Here's the Minion Master Scourge build guide. It's using the Melandru rune with Menders Amulet. So Scourge has a lot of barrier synergy with healing power, and you have a lot of self-sustain with the Dagger main hand. So healing power is really important for keeping your sustain up, but also healing your minions, because they're the ones that are actually doing the work. You have 6 minions with this build. You have 5 minion slots, but one of them has 2 minions on it. And obviously Reaper with Rise is not better, so I don't want to hear anything about that. But basically, the minions are just buffed up as much as possible, and because you're a Scourge, you have the ability to use your Shroud Skills without any animation. So you can always be using them even if you're getting focused. And that's really good because you have no stun breaks on this build, right? Because you have all minion skills. And that's why I take Melandru rune, because that gives you minus 20 incoming stun duration. It also gives you a lot of toughness and incoming condition duration minus, so it's pretty good for keeping you alive, because if you die, then your minions die, obviously, and the minions are more important than you. So keeping the minions alive also means keeping you alive. But there's also other ways that you can keep those minions alive. So if we look at the traits, we have Necromantic Corruption, will give you conditions, will transfer it to your minions, but then the minions will transfer those to your enemy. So that kind of is your Condi Cleanse in this build. You have 6 minions and they can each Condi Cleanse for you, and that also does a lot of counter pressure, because say you're getting like immobilized, chilled, crippled, the minions will put that back onto your enemies and they'll take it from you. So that's really good. It also makes them deal 25% more damage. The minions, they may not look like they deal a lot of damage, but they eventually deal damage over time. So it's all about landing the minion damage and kind of like landing CCs to be able to land your minion damage. You also have Flesh of the Master, which gives your minions 50% more health. Really important for keeping them alive. And you get 2 stacks of Death Carapace, which is just 20 toughness for every minion you have alive. If you have all your minions out, you will have 12, so you'll get an extra 120 toughness. And then also Death Nova is really important. So whenever you kill an enemy, you'll get a Jagged Horror, which those aren't really that important, but whenever one of your minions dies, and this is inevitable that they will die, an explosion will happen at their location, which deals like 400 base damage and puts a poison field. And the poison field is really important because not only does it reduce the healing of your enemies, but it also leaves a poison field which can be blasted with your bone minions for weakness. So you get a lot of weakness with this build, with the minions exploding, and that helps you to just survive, right? Because if they can't cleave out your minions with power damage because they're weakened, and they can't cleave it out with Condis because you have Condi Cleanse on Nefarious Fervor and on the Necromantic Corruption, then your minions are going to survive, right? So that's really important. And you also, it's kind of like a combination with Putrid Explosion from your bone minions. So Death Nova deals like 400 base damage, and then Putrid Explosion does another like 2000 base damage. So when you summon your bone minions, they're really important burst tools. So you'll see here the bone minions are like a melee minion. They do absolutely no damage, right? Like they'll Condi cleanse for you and do a little bit of vampirism, but mainly you want to use them for the explosion. As you can see here, it gives out the area weakness when they explode, because it does the blast finisher and it does the poison field, and it also just does like insane damage. So it's really important to kind of understand where your bone minions are so that you can blast them in the right area, because if you blast it and it's not on the target, then it won't hit. So there's a little bit of micro managing here to do, but it's not like StarCraft levels. And so that's pretty much the death magic traits there. You have condition damage reduction as well when you have the 10 stacks. So when you have all your minions out, you're going to take a lot less damage from conditions. You also have Melandru rune giving you a lot of condition duration reduction. So there's just a lot of passive benefits to this build, which means that you can just focus on letting your minions do all the work for you. In blood magic, you have transfusion. So transfusion makes your F4 ability, which is already a fear. It allows you to port down bodies to yourself, but since allies are not as important as your minions, you don't really care about that. You really care about the pulsing heal that you can give to your minions. So what you can do is, this is kind of like a duelist build. So you'll summon out your minions and you'll be fighting on a node usually, and what you'll do is, like, say the enemy's over here and your minions are on top of the enemy, and you'll be supporting your minions through your Shroud Skills while you're also supporting the minions that are sort of ranged as well, because you have ranged minions and you have melee minions. So you're kind of supporting melee minions with your shade, and then you're supporting the ranged minions with yourself. And you want to keep them alive, obviously. So just doing that and healing them every pulse of the transfusion is pretty good. So it also heals yourself as well, right? So more sustain for yourself means more survivability, which means more time for your minions to get out there. So next we have Vampiric Presence. This just gives more vampirism procs to your minions. They already have vampirism procs from this trait, so they kind of have like two, because this aura affects your minions. And yeah, when you're with your team, you'll be giving that aura to your allies instead, higher priority to actual players, but in reality the minions are more important. So you want to be by yourself so that it prioritizes the minions. And then you also have just a lot of lifesteal yourself whenever you hit, so you'll be gaining health yourself. And also I have the Dagger trait, so whenever you're above 75% HP, you have 25% movement increase, and that's really good because there really is no other movement speed on this build. So like when you're in a fight and you're below 75% HP, you will lose this, and that's kind of, that's kind of bad. But you really only need the movement speed increase when rotating between nodes, right? Because you're just trying to fight with your minions. You can't really kite too much with this build, because if you kite too much, then you're kiting your minions. You kind of have to use the Z-axis in a way, and what I mean by that is using terrain. So what you can do is like jump up and down here rather than going far away, because then it's easier for your minions to stick near you, right? So you want to use terrain often more than just using distance, so that your minions, as I said, get more of their attacks in, because you're not kiting your minion. So yeah, the movement speed increase while you're above 75%, and also Dagger skills get a recharge reduction by 33% is pretty good when you have a 10-second skill, so it's like 7 seconds. And And Life Siphon is such a high value skill for this build because it gives you so much healing, and it also gives you more healing and damage while bleeding. So you can combine that with Dark Pact, which gives you self-bleeding. But oftentimes that'll just be translated into giving the enemy bleeding, right? Because your minions will just transfer it off. But Dark Pact is really good because you have a 3-second immobilize. And this is super important because minions are very easily outplayed. So you want to be sort of like CCing your enemy as the minions are wailing on them. So Dark Pact is really good with this minion build because you have 6 minions. So allowing them all to just hit the same target because they can't dodge or move while they're immobilized for 3 seconds. That's a long immo, by the way. Yeah, it's really good. And it also converts boons to conditions, and we'll talk about that in the Scourge trait line. So why don't we just get there? So Scourge is kind of interesting because you have a choice between Scourge and Soul Reaping with this kind of like minion build, right? And Soul Reaping doesn't really give you that much. It just gives you kind of like self-sustain. So okay, I'm in combat, so I can't show you, but basically it would just give you self-sustain, a little bit more healing with the trait that would be right here, and then the Grandmaster is like Eternal Life, which you don't really need because you have plenty of minions to give you Life Force. And then in Scourge you can also get Life Force from Nourishing Ashes. So whenever you inflict burning, remove or corrupt a boon, you will gain 3% Life Force. And this build has a lot of boon removal in it. So you have, first of all, Dark Pact. You also, it counts as removing a boon whenever you like someone blocks you with Aegis. And you also have Axe 3, which removes a boon. And you also have Focus 5, which removes 3 boons. And you'll also have, as I mentioned before, you will have your Shade Skills, which your Harbinger Shroud, which is your F5, you will have that, which gives like, kind of changes the effect to be more of a single hit than just pulsing AoE, but it also converts boons, 2 of them, to conditions, so that's more Life Force for you. And just in general, you're going to be gaining Life Force off your minions, so you can supplement the minion Life Force with Nourishing Ashes. And also, if you really feel like you need it, you can go with a Revocation Sigil on your axe, but I feel like Exposure and Opportunity is just so much more burst. I like that instead. But if you do want more sustain, because Revocation also has pretty good synergy with Feed from Corruption. And Feed from Corruption is whenever you remove or corrupt a boon, you gain that boon. So if you have a Revocation Sigil, it'd be corrupting or removing a boon every 10-second ICD. But you have plenty of ways to remove boons. And say, for example, like Unholy Feast, that's an AoE boon corrupt. So that would give you multiple boons. And also, Harbinger Shroud is an AoE, which removes 2 boons. So that's an AoE, boon generator for you. And obviously, you're not really in team fights too much with this build. You can go into team fights, but those are much more volatile situations where your minions can just die instantly to massive AoEs, right? So generally, you do want to stay on the side nodes. And yeah, so just putting out your shades, supporting your minions will give you damage reduction and concentration, which is just more sustain for yourself. And yeah, that's pretty much the traits here. So obviously I have the Axe Focus with Exposure Opportunity. That's just the highest damage sigils that you can get. This is your damage set. And then you go to Dagger Warhorn, and that's your sustain set. So Energy Cleansing is on there. You can pretty much put anything besides these 2 here. I just like Energy Cleansing because that's just like your stereotypical I want to survive sigils. So yeah, that's that. So let's go on to the skills. So we already talked about the Shroud Skills a little bit. Obviously, your F2 is your most important one because it converts conditions into boons for you and nearby allies, and that's very powerful because not only is it double Condi Cleanse, but it gives you boons, and it Condi cleanses your minions as well. So like if there's a Burn Guardian trying to counter you, they need to not only cover the Condi, but they need to cover it twice, right? Because if they have burn on you, and then say for example like my burn Dragon Hunter build has a cover cripple, well this would remove 2 Condis. So you need like Vuln as well, and some builds do run Zeal, which would give out Vuln, but then they wouldn't give out cripple because they wouldn't be Dragon Hunter. So yeah, it's really nice to go versus burn guards. Well, it's not nice, right? Like burn guards do counter you, but it's nice to use the skill to sort of deal with that counter. So you gotta make sure that you're tending to your minions unless you just want them to die, and that seems kind of counterintuitive since they're the main point of the build. But anyways, you also can give barrier, so your F2 and your F3, you're mainly spamming those. You also do spam your F4 as much as you possibly can just to heal, but only it does cost a lot of life force, so only if you really think that you need it. And there's also a lot of utility that you can get from a instant cast fear. So like if you're CC'd, for example, and there are people like wailing on you, Garish Pillar has no cast time, so you can use that while stunned because you have no stun breaks, and you can fear people off of you. So you can sort of use it as like a pseudo stun break, not really to stun break, but to get people off you while you're stunned. So yeah, it's nice for that. And then we already talked about Harbinger Shroud, but on top of it giving you your conversions, which gives you life force and boons, it'll give you a barrier on the first pulse of it, and then it'll do this little effect, and then once it lands it'll do another barrier. So that's really good, and you want to be putting your shades out. Obviously you can put out 2 shades. Generally I don't like to put out 3 shades because that's using too much of the cooldown, so I like to have 2 shades out. What you generally do is you're standing on a node and you kind of like create a triangle sort of thing here. Let's find a node looking thing. So like say this is a node over here, and this is much smaller than a node, but I would do like a shade over there, a shade over here, and then I would stand over here, and then you've got full coverage of the node so that your minions and the enemy can be getting hit by your shade skills at all times. So that's completely optional though, you can just let the minions do the work. But anyways, so next is the utilities and weapon skills. So your auto attack on Dagger is actually pretty strong. It gives you life force and allows you to be in melee range to kind of get your shade skills without using the shade cast. So you can sort of train a target like this, and it doesn't really do that much damage, but when you've got minions wailing on the target too and they've got to deal with that, it kind of adds up. And if they're attacking you, then obviously you can back up and use your Dagger 2, which is a massive heal skill, and it also hits quite a few times, so it's proccing Vampiric procs every single time, so that's just even more healing. So it does a lot of damage and it does a lot of healing, and if you're above the threshold, right, it's a lower cooldown. So as you can see here, it's like a 6-second cooldown there. So yeah, and then we already talked about Dark Pact. You have Wail of Doom, really important skill because it's a CC, which allows you to prevent the enemy from just, you know, going about all their business and countering your minions. And if your minions are attacking and you're not attacking because you're using a Wail of Doom, which does no damage, but at least you're preventing the enemy from attacking, that's a win-win situation. That's momentum. So Whale of Doom is really good, and then Locust Swarm is kind of nice because it also gives you a little bit of swiftness. Say like if you're below 75% HP and you're not getting your movement speed increase, you can use Locust Swarm to get it. So it also gives you a little bit of life force if you're hitting nearby enemies. So the Dagger is really good for sustain, but the Axe is what you're going to use for damage. So you have Spinal Shivers, that's going to chill your target, and it's going to remove 3 boons, and it actually does a lot of damage if it removes 3 boons. So this skill is kind of busted, and I like to use that as sort of like the opener because it's such a long range skill. And then you'll do like the 4 skill, which is just a sort of long range skill too, but it's slow moving, and it'll give Vuln. And then once you give that Vuln, you can use Ghastly Claws. And Ghastly Claws has bonus damage per Vuln stack. So say Vulnerability gives 1% extra damage per stack, but on Ghastly Claws it has double the value. So if you have 8 Vuln, then it will deal 16% more extra damage. And you also have the exposure sigil on this, so you're going to get 5 Vuln from swapping in, and then you'll get another 8 Vuln from using 1 Soul Grasp. So the combo often will be swap in 5, 4, 2, and then that'll deal a lot of damage because Ghastly Claws is a pretty hard hitting thing, and there's very little animation to it. So yeah, it's just really good. You're taxing your enemy of so much health while your minions are doing their work. So it's like you're putting them on a timer because you deal decent damage, but you're also very tanky, and your minions are unstoppable if they don't try to kill them. So Unholy Feast, that's just a nice AoE cripple, which is also a boon rip, and you can use it while kiting very well. So it's just a massive AoE, so just use it while kiting, and it helps you to survive a lot because it'll often, like if you're going against a rampage warrior, you can like cripple or rip the stability that they have and turn it into fear, and that'll help you to survive, right? Because you don't have any stun breaks to deal with rampage, so you've got to kind of aggressively deal with things. And then you've also got, you know, boon rip and corrupt on your Harbinger Shroud and your Dark Pact in those situations. So your minions, why do I choose these minions? Well, the only other minion that I could choose is Summon Fleshworm, and that's a stun break, which is kind of nice, but you'd have to use it sort of where you want it to be, and that means you're a little bit more limited in where you can be. So personally, I prefer, you'd probably be swapping out the Bone Fiend or the Shadow Fiend, but I feel like they do a lot more damage because they can move. So I like these two instead of the Fleshworm, but you can take Fleshworm if you really think that you need that stun break and escape. But if you need a stun break and escape, I think you're pretty much already dead or something like that. But either way, all these minions are just really good. The minion heal skill gives you a almost 1000 heal. Yeah, it gives a 1000 heal per time it attacks. And if you look at it, it attacks maybe every 3 seconds. So that's quite a bit of sustain just from that. And then your Bone Fiend is another range minion. So you've got 2 range minions here. Your Bone Fiend, and what you can do with the Bone Fiend is you can use this ability and that'll immobilize the target. So right here I use the Bone Fiend ability, it immobilizes itself, and then it immobilizes the target, and then from there you can use your Putrid Explosion while they're immobilized, and they're sitting in the poison there and just getting so much damage from all the minions. So I feel like Bone Fiend is super important. But also the Shadow Fiend is really good too, because it helps you to kind of keep up to the target. So the Shadow Fiend is a melee minion, and it does it's okay damage. It's not amazing. It attacks very fast though. So it's like 600-ish damage every 1 or 2 seconds, but it has to be in melee, so it's not going to be attacking non-stop like that. But what's really good is the attack, which will blind, chill, and weaken the target. And blind, chill, and weakness are all very good conditions for stopping someone from attacking you. So it reduces their physical damage, it reduces their endurance regeneration, it reduces their skill recharge, and it reduces their movement speed. And it'll also blind the next attack. So what you can actually do is secure stomps with this skill. So like for example, I'm like there's no animation to the skill, right? So I can cast that while I'm casting something else, and the Shadow Fiend will pour it in, right? It's a 1200 range skill, and then it'll blind the target, and you can sort of like stomp with that, or just use it as a way to catch up to the target, as I said. And yeah, it lets the minions do their work. And then lastly, you have the Flesh Golem. The Flesh Golem, it's pretty strong because it has a really strong knockback ability. The damage on it is kind of okay. It's a melee minion, so it's not going to hit all the time. But yeah, as I said, the knockback is super strong. So it does no damage because CCs do no damage, but it's a really kind of long range knockdown. And that's really important for, as I said, locking down targets so that the rest of your minions can do their work. So the build has a lot of CC in it with the Flesh Golem, the Bone Fiend, the Immobilizes, and also just debilitating conditions. So yeah, those are the skills, and generally that's pretty much the build. So before a match, you'll want to make all of your minions give you life force, because when the match starts, it sort of like resets your life force, but it also, there's this weird interaction where it also kills off any minions that you've made, so then you get the life force after the match starts. So you get life force after it resets your life force. So just use all your minions before the match starts and you get a ton of Shroud, and then use your bone minions immediately and then blow them both up, and you've got almost maximum Shroud off of that for the opener. So it's really strong for a Scourge because it's hard for them to be focused if they have Shroud. And by the time you get to your first fight, you'll have those bone minions up again, as you can see here. So as I said, this is a 1v1 build. This is a poor core guardian here. They're just kind of like a bunker guardian, and as you can see here, like this is a build meant to survive, right? This guardian, and I'm just wailing on them. And if I were going against like a holo or something like that that has a lot of counter pressure, they'd be dying a lot faster. And yeah, so this build does a lot of damage. And as you can see there, they got immobilized in all of my CC there, and we just did a ton of damage there. And at this point, so yeah, what I did there is I summoned my bone minions in melee range and then immediately blow them up. So there's almost no animation to when the bone minions are going to explode, right? Other than seeing that it's in melee range and thinking, well, is he going to blow it up now or later? So yeah, those can be very dangerous because, as I said, they have like 2,000 base damage. And as much of a meme this build is, we'd have to go to Lord to match the level of memes that we're going for here, right? Like that would just be appropriate. So one thing that this build is really good at is PvE. So we're going to do the Lord. Obviously, we're doing pretty well at this match right now. You know, I won my 1v1 at far, and the rest of my team is winning the rest of the map. But we're going to go to Lord to throw, because why not? So I'm going to go for the soldiers first, because I don't really feel safe pushing all the way into the Lord, because yeah, as you can see, their Revenant is coming in. So I take out the soldiers first and I try to survive. Now I did say that I should kite using the Z-axis, but I don't do that in this situation because I don't know, I'm not used to the build. Should have just kited up and down the Z-axis, and that allows my minions to be a little bit more in range of me. And as you can see, the Revenant just ported up there in downstate. I thought this was a self-exposed video, not a hacker exposed video, but apparently that's a thing. Revenants can either port in downstate or they're hacking, I guess. But anyways, so yeah, the build has a lot of ability to survive in situations where it's kiting because it's just so tanky. And as long as you're not like 1v3 where you can't counter pressure yourself, because like your dagger skill is most of your counter pressure, but also your sustain, you can actually survive pretty hard. So it's a really good duelist build, but if your minions are dead, yeah, you lose a lot of your sustain. And I don't know why my team is coming here to help me at the Lord, but you know, that's the thing. So I go back in to greed for the casters. I don't know why, but I'm getting chased by the Rev again, and I get liched. So, you know, it is sort of a bad thing to waste lich in a 2v1 like this, but I do have 6 minions, so it's sort of like a 2v7 if you really think about it that way. But we actually do get their Rev down because my holo is pushing in with me, but I get down by their holo and I rally him, so that was unfortunate to die in a 7v3. But anyways, we're gonna respawn because we've got the rest of the map. You know, the other 3, you know, actual players of our team, not the minions, are capping the rest of the map while we 2v3. And we are gonna get snowballed a little bit because we died at Lord, but I think we're gonna be fine because I'm gonna run back to far. You know, that's the duelist role, is just go far. So I go to far, I summon my minions, but I realize we're kind of outnumbered here again. So I kind of don't want to die because then my minions die and they're really the MVP of this team right now. So I've got to worry about my life a little bit more, and I get chased by the Rev, and what I'm doing here is using the Z-axis a little bit with this little tree branch. You'll see. Yeah, so this is a really good kite spot because you can't really dodge while standing on that kite spot, and I can just stand there and free cast, and it's really good. And here, yeah, I'm not using the Z-axis as much, but yeah, right here I should be using my, yeah, I used my minion skills. Those are really good. I could use the, yeah, the knockdown actually lands there, which is really nice because I was CC'd and so was he. And yeah, at this point, oh, I get Jade Winded, which is really bad because even though I do have minus 20% stun duration, I mean, it is a 3-second stun still. So we're looking pretty bad here. But I stand right at that edge, and for a Rev to port to me, they're going to port below me, and that pretty much secures this kill because the Revenant just auto paths through my minions. And we get that kill because I used the Z-axis, as I said, strategically. So I push into Lord again because it wouldn't be a Minion Master game if I didn't go Lord. And I go for the casters now. So this is, we're going for the long haul here. You know, we're not going straight for the Lord. We're going for the minions, right? We're a minion build. We gotta attack their minions too. We have to force their resources out, sort of like a, you know, a StarCraft match. But the enemy heroes are on my tail again, so I immediately just leave, and the Z-axis isn't really an option here because I want to get onto the map again. And yeah, the Rev's on me. I use my F5, which gives me a ton of barrier and allows me to survive. But I am pretty low, and there's another Necro on me too, so this is going to be dangerous. I do have a little bit of health left with my barrier, but I think, yeah, I'm going to die here. Or am I? Maybe? No, I'm actually, yeah, I'm dead here. I'm definitely dead. So I die. So one thing that you have to remember, obviously, is the Z-axis helped me to survive there, and that actually allowed my team to outnumber the rest of the map for quite a time. But yeah, I was also kind of dead on minions. So when you're in an outnumbered situation like that, your minions die a lot quicker, right? Because one person can be killing the minions and taking counter pressure, and then the other one can be attacking you and not taking counter pressure from the minions. So there's a big difference in being outnumbered on this build and being outnumbered on another kind of necro build with more mobility. So you got to be careful of that, but I'm going to go far anyways again, because that is the role of this build, is a duelist. You go far, you split the enemy team, you find them in smaller numbers, and then you outnumber them, not through rotations, but through summoning minions. So we get to far, we cap that, and now at this point I have a little bit of a conundrum, because I want to fight in small scale fights, but I kind of have to go to mid to help my team. I see their engineer going stealth like he's going to decap, so I immediately leave and try to just play back node. This is one of the things that carries teams pretty hard, is the players who do the dirty work. They watch the node instead of going for kills always. Like, you know, the anime protagonist is always like, I gotta be there for all the action. But people forget that the supporting characters actually do a lot of work too. So you gotta watch for that back node like I did there, and sort of pressure this engineer to stay in the team fight even though he doesn't really want to be there. But anyways, now we're still in this team fight. We've kind of gotten home node and far node on lockdown. I go for the res on my Ellie here with transfusion, and we actually get it, so that's really good. But I have no minions, so I'm just gonna leave this, resummon my minions, and wait for another fight. Maybe I'm waiting a really long time here to summon the minions. But wait, am I going for Lord again? Oh no. Okay, no, I'm not going for Lord. I was definitely thinking about it though. So now the holo, which is overheated, is coming towards me. Now I said that this is a low effort build. I didn't say it was necessarily, you know, high tier build. So maybe my opponents are not that good, but they're definitely worse than my minions, right? So that's definitely a thing. Here I'm pushing into far in a 1v2, so this is super dangerous. As I just mentioned, when you're outnumbered like this, your minions can, you know, they can sometimes get killed. But I land a really nice flesh golem charge, and it knocks both of them down, which allows me to survive. And I get a nice Warhorn daze, so that actually allows my minions to get a little bit of peel and survive here. But now it's kind of like a 2v3, and I can't really support, I mean I can support my NG, but not really in like a 2v3 situation. As you can see there, I put a shade down and give barrier to my NG, which is kind of nice, you know. It's a good thought. I'm healing him with transfusion as well, but I'm really caring about my minions. And we get this Guardian down really low. He's forced to invuln, and now we're winning this in a 2v2 because one of their players rotated out. My minions are dead though, so it's kind of dangerous. I land a Harbinger Shroud, and that steals some regen for me, which is nice. And now I'm just auto attacking on Dagger because I know that we're winning so hard that they can't really counter pressure me, so I can just take the risky positioning of using the Dagger autos. And yeah, my NG is really low here, so I have to be really aggressive. I'm going to summon my bone minions very soon, which will probably get the finish and the kill. Yeah, so I summon them in melee range. He actually blocks the first bone minion there, and now I can just use the second one to cleave the down body if I want to. And it looks like I'm not going to do that. So yeah, at this point we're gonna win the game. So yeah, really good build for small scale fights. Very easy to play because even though the minion skills kind of require a little bit of micro to understand where the minion's positioning is, it's still, you know, kind of optional to do that. The minions can pretty much do all the work for you. But yeah, there's a little bit of skill involved with knowing where your minions are. But yeah, anyways, if you like this kind of content, like the video and subscribe. And let me know, any StarCraft pros out there getting into Guild Wars 2, you know, I got the build for you.